very much. Hey, all right. So before we start, shall we play a little game? We've got some, different types of activities we could do in cyber here on the screen. We can start with vulnerability management, detection of and incident response, GRC on the top, and we've got offensive security and 8-bit game of global thermonuclear war on the bottom. Which one would you prefer to play? Maybe if you prefer to play the top, raise your hand now. Something from the top, like vulnerability management, or would you rather play an offensive security game and some global thermonuclear war?
I'm all about the last one.
Yeah. If you go with that's why I created this talk. There is a lot of people in the security community that really love to break things and see how they break and burn. And I suppose that's part of, I do too from time to time, of course. And the part of this talk is about that. And I called it, your red team is missing the point. So who am I? I sometimes refer to myself as Forrest Gump of Scottish cyber. And it's kind of because of those pictures, I feel like I've been everywhere. I've been there, when the first cybersecurity SOC was created for one of the major banks in UK. That was down in Edinburgh, and 2 different cybersecurity companies are now spawned out of that work that we've done for that bank, 11 or more years ago. Done plenty of different stuff, was about many different places, so you've got here some things on the screen. More recent things for when the pandemic started, I worked as a head of information security for Heineken UK, and I now transitioned to being a BCSO lead at Quorum Cyber. So that's me. In last year, I haven't really done much certification, just SAPSA, and then gained some weight, so that's me. What is red teaming all about? So red teaming, we could say it's a specialized form of ethical hacking. So obviously, I'm assuming that everybody in the audience will know what it is, but it's sometimes good to put the definition on so we know what we're talking about. And if you're putting the definition on, we can put some more details about it as well. So obviously, there is something called ethical hacking maturity model, and they say that you start with vulnerability scanning for an organization, then you do vulnerability assessment. How they differ, it's probably a small difference. Then you do some penetration testing, and then you go into the interesting stuff. It's got a red color, it needs to be interesting, so it's red teaming. All right, so that's where you go right after pen testing. Fair enough. Why I'm here? So as the head of information security for Heineken UK, but also other roles, I sometimes got some reports that were, and behaviors that were not really right, things that I didn't really think that were right in cybersecurity community. So that's part of it. And I started speaking about it to, my fellow CISOs and head of information security, and one of the guys was like, yes, finally somebody talking about it. We really had enough of our red team. And actually, their red team is one of the well-branded, one of the most known brands for red teaming around. And no, we just had enough. They're not professional. They're not delivering value. We're just going to do without, we're just going to hire robots. Just going to automate everything. It's like, eh? So at this time, I really, I know you've got good manners, but I would assume that somebody would try to boo me off the stage because, obviously red teaming is supposed to be that highly sophisticated engagement where you're, putting threat intelligence, OSINT and everything into place, and only then you're trying to attack your target. So what is Zibby talking about and what does he knows? It sounds like he was on the blue team for a long time and not, much on the red team ever. What am I talking about? So obviously, check people's, criteria for talking about things. I myself haven't done red teaming in my life, but I manage pen testing and red teaming engagements when I work in KPMG. I've been on the receiving end of those engagements, and I'm not alone. I've got colleagues. So I've got guys from other organizations that I know and trust, and before doing that talk, I actually reach out to them and say, okay, before I tell you how I see the world, can you tell me what you see? When I give you that title, can you tell me a little bit more how you feel about some of the engagement? So these are the 3 guys I reached out to, and they are at different stages of their career doing different things. Aaron, very, very young looking guy, but he's actually very skilled, very fast progressing through the environment. Dan, again, great guy, and then Conrad's as well, now a director in Singapore for KPMG. So, can robots replace red teamers? Part 1. So imagine you've got the task, you need to get the crown jewels and get out undetected. You're somewhere here, outside the walls, on that little boat, armed, ready to go in, get the crown jewels and get out. You've talked to the people inside the organization, they're like, no, this CISO stuff, this guy, you're not going to get anywhere near our crown jewels before they find you. So you get some of the best guys in your team, and they're like, hold my beer, you cannot do it. I suppose now I should put a piece of cake. Their previous company was the beer, now we're known for the cake. So it turns out it's an easy thing. You've done some OSINT, you've sent just few phishing emails, suddenly you've got initial access, you elevate access quite easily, you get domain admin within 20 minutes, and you're like, okay, what we're going to do here? So for the next 2 weeks, you just spend time trying to attack this Active Directory in a different way. And eventually, you create the report full of highs and criticals that you never told about, the CISO in between. And you're like, yeah, they're going to cry when they see that report. We just demolished them here. Well, things are all good, isn't it? And then you write a report. Your report for a pen test or a red team exercise looks something like that. You remember we had a lovely castle and fortress of Dubrovnik, but now you can't really tell, the trees or the crown jewels somewhere here, because the report doesn't actually, the pen test and the red team, or the red team, not pen test, but the red teamers didn't take time to understand what's important. You got domain admin, but is the domain even important to them? Are the crown jewels connected to the domain? Do you know that? So it seems an easy scenario. The output wasn't perfect, but that's where you are. So let's do a part 2. So can robots replace red teamer? Part 2. Slightly harder scenario. You've got an 80K engagement to do a red team. And you spent over 2 weeks trying to get any form of initial access. You've been phishing them. You've been trying to drop USBs, everything. And you're just not getting it. You spend about 50K worth of effort just to get to the point where one person clicked on a link and you've got some initial access. So you're thinking what you're going to do now. So you quickly go to the best coder you've got. They rewrite some Metasploit exploit so nothing can detect it. And you drop it on their machine. And it works. You're in, you elevate access, and you feel like Harry Potter when he first got the snitch because you got the golden ticket. You can now create any ticket within the environment you want. So you do things that you want to do. You even take the dump of the full database. You just feel amazing. You're ready. You're like Avengers after the battle. You're ready for the debrief, okay? So you're going in to speak to the CISO. And you actually think that that's how CISO will feel there, and that he will cry a little bit. So you can't hear it, but you can research that video on YouTube, or I will try to find a link. It's just some substitute where you can see somebody fish them, and CISO gets very angry, as you can assume in this video, because we all seen that video and that clip. But, they dropped Cobalt Strike. And finally, the CISO is not very happy with their crew here. So you're going in ready like an Avenger after the battle, all shiny. It doesn't matter that you just, was fighting for a few days now. And, you were expecting to be going to the normal place you've seen them, but actually you're being led to some, darker corridors and you're wondering what's going on. And you suddenly realize that you're being taken to the incident rooms underneath bank. And okay, you go in, everybody looks a bit tired, and okay, and you slowly realize they didn't know that they had a red team. They thought it was for real. They've been there for 2 days trying to defend, the walls of the castle without knowing it was a red team. You see some, team sessions in the corner, and you recognize some faces from the vendor space. They just not, shaking their heads, looking at you, and they would want to swear at you, but the only thing they say, it's not what real adversary would do. And it dawns on you, CISO never calls a red team after the first 100 days in the office. They didn't know about it. It was audit, and they didn't tell anybody. You laugh it off. Anyway, you got it. You got them flat. They should be prepared. You spend 2 weeks on a report, and again, that's how your report comes in. Again, nobody can recognize the crown jewels for trees. It's the same quality of the report. Doesn't matter. It was a harder engagement. Oh, actually, this time the CISO is a little bit grateful because we managed to dump the database, and their vendor told them that nobody can ever dump this database with their tool on, so they can now get their refund from the vendor. Fair enough. That's the only good thing that you've done for those guys. Sometime later, you see the name of the company in the news, and you're thinking, is that linked to the fact that I've done an AD sync for the domain and left the USB stick on a train? Nah, no way. No chance. So that's how sometimes red teams are perceived from the perspective of an organization. They often highly disruptive, and often the value that you're getting at the back is, some report that's got a little bit, color by paint by numbers kind of thing. So what can we do to assure the survival of the red team? Can we do something? And I think you can. First of all, verify the maturity of the blue team before you start the red team. Actually try and go on to speak to them. They don't need to know when you're going to attack them. It could be in half a year time. But go in and actually know where the company is at. What's the maturity of the organization and the blue team there. Don't always insist on starting from scratch. There's so many engagement I've seen and heard of where, you've got really 80k engagement, 80,000 pounds for an engagement, and you spend 50,000 pounds on it to get initial access. In some cases, just assume somebody somewhere will get initial access on your organization. Give a laptop to the red team and say, okay, you can pretend you're in, and let's start from there. Where can you get? So you don't always have to start from scratch. You can sometimes, assume that somebody clicked on the link. So basically give a link to an insider and say, okay, on that day, you're going to click that link and we're going to see what's going to take from there. Or you can assume that you're already from some form of, basic access where you've got an account. So start from there. Play a realistic threat actor. So, find out what is the threat intelligence given to the blue team. And if, and then try to play against, play the adversary that actually could attack this type of environment. So, don't put your best team that you've got to read, against some other guys. So you don't put the guys that could write Metasploit against the guys that need to, Google what Metasploit does. Obviously those guys were very skilled and very kind of direct. If you talk about lapsus, they actually didn't have limits in terms of calling and using kind of safety triggers in security and everything else. But still, when you're doing a red team, don't put, like amazing coders against, an organization that actually is never going to have a dedicated attacker. They may have, somebody who is going to use an opportunistic attack, and just if they see their accounts, that's when they're going to attack them. So play fair. And never belittle the opponent, never belittle the blue teams. Actually, I think we now talk about it more than we used to talk before. It used to be that, everybody was like in awe of the penetration testers and the red teamers. But actually, it's often much harder to be a blue team because you need to protect the castle 24/7. You need to do it day in and day out. The attacker, really, they need to be lucky once or twice. Lucky to get in and lucky to stay undetected. So don't belittle them. Try to, if you're a red teamer or you're an offensive security person, go and try to do a second planning, detection and response or risk, and understand what's important to the organization, how to write things that are important to them inside. And you can offer, right along red teams, so the blue teams see how it is from their side. Offer review services when you actually look at the use cases that they've got in their SIM tools, and it's like, yeah, you're missing that, and that. You can help. You don't always have to go and attack. You can go in and just use your brain and use your perspective to have a chat with the blue team and say, you know what? The attacker would probably bypass that going this way. Do you have anything, there? And in the way you can together threat model the environment and find what are the controls that are missing without even, trying to test anything. And never overblown findings, because I heard it so many times from security companies, like the implied, there is always an implied thing in the reports that, if you don't do it, the company will just diminish. You're over. It's not the case. Most companies with good cash flows will come back. Maersk has spent $300 million to get back their 4,000 servers, 45,000 PCs, and 2,500 applications back up and running. But, if you look at it, their share price, since they've been hit by, NotPetya 2017, I think they're doing pretty well, They more than make up for it now. So don't overblow the findings. And when you're talking about findings, agree the findings with the blue team before the report goes anywhere else. You don't want, if you don't agree, then the only thing is you can take it higher up, and what the higher up person will do, they will basically lose trust in both of you. There is no chance that they will be like, I'm going to side with the blue team or I'm going to side with the red team. No, they're just going to lose trust with both teams. Go and agree your findings. Talk like human beings, because you are, you understand technology. People higher up may not. So you need to agree what is the finding. And when we talk about it, also, make sure that somebody in the blue team knows about the red team. I wasn't joking when I was talking about the scenario where, people were in proper incident rooms for days, not knowing it's a red team exercise, and they were close to call NCSC to help because they thought something really is happening. And don't do, domain control sync or take profies. I heard about guys that, if you ask them what's on their laptop, they would be proudly saying, I've got that domain, I've got all the tickets from that domain, I've got all the identities from that domain. And it's like, why do you need it? The next engagement you've got, you can't use those trophies. It's just trophies. You're not allowed to reuse it for a red team because it doesn't make sense. It's not what you're asked to do. So just don't collect those things. And if you do collect them, just securely delete them at the end of the engagement. Actually, you should have a process to make sure it happens. Know the audience. If you're writing a report, you think, the report, you're imagining the person that you're giving the report to. And it's wrong, because every report that I've seen from a pen test, from a red team, should actually go to 3 different audiences. The exec summary should be written in a language that goes to the proper execs in the environment. Then the technical summary should go to somebody like CISO. And all the technical details then go to the CISO's team and the IT team. So actually, a single report should be written with 3 different audiences in mind, and not just one. And finally, there is a time and place for a red team. So if there is that security program or a CISO is really too sure for, their boots, that may be a good time for somebody from that organization to call the red team and say, I think they're bluffing, I don't think they're doing right, or the program is dead, we just need to do something and show and do a bit of shaking. Fair enough, you can do it. But what I'm trying to say, and I think I will eventually go and, speak to the guys that wrote it, I don't believe that the red team should be the next thing in the maturity model after the penetration testing. I believe that if an organization is going through vulnerability scanning to penetration testing, the next thing you should be doing is something more close to purple team, and you should skip altogether the red team in here. It doesn't make sense from everything I've seen to have a pure red team in here. And I'm even joking here, there is a place, for lower maturity clients, the place for the red team is called the purple team. That's how I get it. The only exception is some, and that's where red team started, and that's probably why it's there. It's because banking regulations made it mandatory to run red teams, for some organizations. And probably that's why, people have put it there. But that's the only reason. So we can look at the definitions and things like that. So long live the red team. And how do we get hired into it? How are we for the time? We're good for the time. So we're just going to run through some of the slides. We're recording that session as well. So looking at your faces, guys, you're probably all hired already within the industry. But I'll run through some slides because we all know that we're suffering from the fact that not that many people are going to cyber, and sometimes they are also pushed away, feeling like they're pushed away from cyber. I personally was speaking to a guy that, applied to a job working with me a year ago, and he only started his job today with another company. We didn't get him because we had a better candidate at the time, and he didn't get a job for the past year, So, how do we get hired? Can you hack a job interview? If you think you can hack computers, learn how to hack people or be nice to people. Because there are techniques to get you to the interview stage and also past the interview stage. There is, I think it was a CISO relationship podcast that often asks the questions, would you hire a brilliant jerk? And the answer every week is, the guy has to choose, would you hire a brilliant jerk or a team of something? And the viewers and everybody are trying to find another kind of option that he will select to hire a brilliant jerk. And every week the answer is no, I wouldn't hire a brilliant jerk. I would prefer another solution, let's say one newbie that never even seen cyber. Because attitude is actually more important than knowledge. You can talk about knowledge, but if somebody in the team is not nice to others, is not playing right, then suddenly from that one person, you've got 10 people that are disgruntled and not having fun in the organization. So make sure that, first of all, you are a nice person, and when you are in a hiring position, hire people that will work together and don't, affect others. And example, actually, who I hired last year for my intern was Leo, and Leo wanted to do red teaming and pen testing. I didn't have that job to him. I was an internship, and it was mainly GRC that I needed. I'm like, Leo, if you come and work with me, I'll get you a good gig as well. So he was doing GRC for me over the summer, but also he also had masters in brewing and cyber. So I got him, okay, go to our breweries and do Wi-Fi testing across breweries. He loved the engagement. But also what I got from him, he was really interested in the offensive, but at the end of the day, he understood that it's not the only thing in the world. There are other important functions in cyber, and actually that's helped him to grow his career from that internship onwards. So I'm really proud of what he's doing now as well. And I think he changed that title already. He was a risk advisor for Deloitte in Switzerland, and I think now he's helping a startup with something important, which is nice. Grow yourself. University will grow you, or any formal education will grow your skills within a program of knowledge, but it won't necessarily grow you as a person or won't tell you exactly where you should be going. I really like reading the biography of Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's that young skinny guy becoming like Mr. Universe just because he thought he could. He thought himself, I can do it, and he done it. And then later he rediscovered himself. He's like, I want to play in a movie. So he funded some of those movies, and he moving to US in order to become a movie star. And from there decided, I want to be a politician. Got closer to Kennedy's, started being a politician. And now from a guy that couldn't say, I'll be back properly, he's very eloquent, and he's got a lot of good ideas in here, speaking and trying to speak to Russians about what's going on in the world. It just amazes me how, by growing yourself and setting yourself targets, and the guy says just repetition, repetition, repetition. Decide where you want to go, what's going to get you there, and repeat. Train and repeat. And it just amazes me where he got to. Some good books. I'm just going to put them on the screen here. These are not books about tricking people. If you read this one, it will specifically tell you that, you do it because you like people. You want to get to know people better because you like them. You want to understand them and help them and help them have fun together with you in life, So these are all good books for learning about others. Don't just stay learning about technology, learn about others. Those books aren't this way. It's more about others. That one here is about, if you want to learn about yourself, great book. Long one, 28 hours on recording, but it's a good book. Finally, be open-minded, respect others, experiment every day, fail when required, fail fast, explore, enjoy, and share. That was me, Zibby. I will be very happy if, you contact me through one of the networks, and all the best. Thank you very much.